Welcome to the show. I'm James.
I'm David.
I'm Riley.
And today we're discussing South Park, bigger, longer, and uncut. We'll laugh, we'll argue, you might get a little too into it, but at the end of the day, they're just film adaptation. It's not an adaptation. They're just movies, damn it. Spoiler alert. That's your Cartman voice.
They didn't hire me for some reason.
Spoiler alert, okay.
Yeah, that's a good one. Then.
Spoiler alert. All right. Next week, it's... Oh, I have this movie written down. I'm going to delete that movie. What is it?
X-Men.
Logan.
Logan. Yeah, I think it's just called
We're going to
Logan.
talk broadly about the X-Men movies. And
Yeah.
our thoughts on the past, the future, and the days of future past.
Oh!
Nicely done. But today, we're going to do this South Park movie from the 90s. But we have another announcement before we get into the show, which is that this show is canceled. Not technically, but I want to use that language because it's a film language.
Good working.
We are now in the final month of the show. This show will not occur in 2023.
Yes.
There are reasons. You guys want to know the reasons. We'll tell you some of the reasons. Mainly that the show is successful by many dimensions. The most important of which is that it is, I believe, beloved by many people. We get so much fan mail and emails and gestures of gratitude and god dang letters. We know that you guys love the show.
They're on the wall there. Can you see one?
That's what's most important. But there's other dimensions by which it's not that successful. If you're part of a big media company, which has channels that are very successful, this podcast isn't that successful. And just personally, we kind of hoped that we'd be in like the top 10 movie podcasts in the world, and we just haven't been able to consistently be there. But more importantly, we haven't been able to give this podcast what it needs to get us to that level because we have other full-time jobs,
Right.
and other things to focus on. So unfortunately, we have to announce that we're in the final month of their just movies, formerly known as Carpool Critics.
I mean, it's been one of the highlights of working at LMG, and I'm very grateful to Linus and the team in general, the whole company, for allowing us the opportunity to do this because, we get to talk about movies for like 2 hours a week,
sweet.
Which is great.
And just movies, which is what they are.
They're not just movies, really, but they are. And I'll miss it. David, do you have anything to say?
I'm super sad. I really enjoy this. This is the highlight of my week at work. But
David fought this with gnashing of teeth and tearing of sackcloth.
biblical fighting.
Yeah.
I'm upset.
But I totally understand, and it's tough being part of a big company. And I plan on continuing the spirit of this in some form.
That's true.
What you guys can look forward to is this episode on South Park, an X-Men episode next week,
Logan.
which is Logan. The following week, something else. We haven't locked that in. After that, it's going to be Avatar 2. And then we're going to close this out, and you're going to love this, with what we're calling Joker Redux. Fans may know that the first episode we ever recorded was a review of the Joker movie with Joaquin Phoenix, and we never aired it.
Because it was...
Not great.
It was our first podcast.
It was hard to listen to.
There's actually other episodes like that too, like American Psycho. But we are going to re-record now that we're experienced podcasters.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to do the Joker again, and we're going to release that. And that shall be the final episode.
Hell yeah.
And the final episode it shall be.
And we will go quietly into the dark night.
And I won't. I'll be screaming the whole time.
That was a little Batman reference.
It'll be a horrible episode to listen to. It'll just be chaos. I thought he did a pretty good job.
But today it's South Park all day. So David, what are you giving this movie out of 10?
South Park can be crass, dumb, and gross, and bigger, longer, uncut is all those things. But it's also clever, funny, and self-aware, and never loses sight of its point. The South Park movie is sweet.
Super sweet.
8.2 out of 10.
Nice.
I like this movie a lot.
I can see that.
A lot, Riley.
Okay, wait, just hold on.
Riley?
South Park leans heavily, bigger, longer, uncut, I guess is the name of the movie, leans heavily into the crude, the shocking, and the ridiculous, with some cutting social commentary to boot, even if that commentary is a bit of a masturbatory exercise in justifying its own existence. It's still got some meat in there. I'm giving it a 7 out of 10.
Nice.
Yeah. I had to warm up to it a little bit. But then
It's such a strong opening though.
What?
You know, just like that note that Kyle or Stan sing. It's got that. It's basically that like bonjour scene from Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah.
Anyways, go ahead.
I feel like a lot of the stuff. Anyway, we'll get into it. James, what's your rating?
Some things age like cheese. Other things age like vegetables. This movie aged like a Greek salad, which contains both cheese and vegetables. Riley, slow it down for you.
That's a good metaphor.
I'm giving it a 7.5 out of 10.
Nice.
Which is lower than I would have anticipated.
Wait,
so far.
You're giving it a 7.5 and I give it a 7? I need to put my rating down.
Stop.
I know that you like this movie way more than I did.
That's illegal.
You're so funny, man. Like
6.5.
You're a high self-monitor, to use your psychology
Okay,
speak
no, I'll
on
stay
you.
7. Keep going. Continue.
Basically, every time we've revisited a movie from my childhood, I've been like, yeah, this movie rules. I'm not crazy. Like Kung Pao was like amazing. Then I watched this one and I was like, yeah, actually, South Park moved on a lot. Like they made this movie when they were on season 3.
Right.
It's still the oh my god they killed Kenny phase of South Park, which just seems like such a blip in their history when you go to like the geological timescale.
Right.
It's still the like Stan puking in Wendy's face South Park, and so it's a musical and the songs are still so awesome.
They're good.
But the comedic thrust of the movie is it has a lot of swearing, and that's just like that's just not funny anymore.
Right.
So it's like, okay, so the jokes are kind of like. There's lots of good jokes in this movie, but I never like laughed out loud on the couch like I did with Kung Pao, even though I have a lot of member berries for this show.
I can agree with that because I think South Park is one of the most important adult animated shows in terms of like what the tone is of the current generation, and it's evolved and changed. And now South Park almost feels behind the 8-ball, like even if it's modern version compared to other shows. And this is even behind where South Park is now. So I can get that, but I think there's something nice about having a South Park piece of media where they really focused and tried for a while instead of like, like the weekly release or like the spending 1 month on it. Like this one feels like it has intention more than I think any other South Park piece of media.
And it's very aimed, and it's the topic of censorship. It's timeless in that way, and it's also timeless because it's a musical. If it wasn't a musical, it'd be way worse, I think.
Yeah.
And it achieves that thing of like not just feeling like a long episode. It really feels like its own movie, and it's great for that. I just don't think, in retrospect, that it's like the best of South Park. I think, like by the time they hit like season 6 of the show, like those episodes are so awesome and hilarious.
And that's
like Osumo 4000, the Walmart episode, the Ninjas episode, the Lord of the Rings episode.
One,
like there's such good stuff in South Park.
Even the video games, I think, especially the first one, I think reaches higher heights than this movie.
I feel like I just absolutely need to clarify at this point that I haven't really consumed any South Park content at all. This is the first full South Park thing I've ever watched.
It's wild. How did you avoid it for so long?
It just wasn't appealing.
He wasn't allowed to. The thing is, he wasn't allowed to watch as a kid.
That's for sure.
That's part
I
of
wasn't allowed to watch The Simpsons as a kid.
You definitely weren't watching this. I was barely allowed to watch this. My parents were neglectful.
But I watched.
I had to stay up past my bedtime.
But I watched the hell out of The Simpsons and Family Guy and all those other like adult animated things when I was like later in high school and university and stuff, and I just never felt the need to watch South Park. But I think it was this is me. I think it's partially because you're a testament to this, James. When you're a fan of South Park, you just like really, really want people to watch South Park, and
you have this contrarian
I don't like when people
thing.
do that. Yeah,
he has this contrarian thing. Like the more you like something, the more he will not watch it.
I will say
illogical. Actually,
I will say there's also like specific experiences that I had in university where one of my closest friends was really, really into South Park, and he would come and we'd like hang out at school, and he would like relay the entire plot of episodes to me. He's like, "Oh, I watched the funniest South Park episode last night," blah, blah, blah. And then he would go through like the whole 30-minute episode over the course of like 15 minutes. And then I'm like, well, I feel like I've watched it.
To watch it.
And it sounds like you enjoyed it. It didn't sound like that great to me.
There is something natural about having an aversion to, like, I remember people talking about Rick and Morty. I didn't get onto Rick and Morty till season 3 was already out. And I remember for years people being like, you love Rick and Morty. It's better than South Park. And I'm like, okay, settle down. I would be like, shut up.
Yeah.
And part of my brain knew, I'm like, a lot of people who like South Park like Rick and Morty. I will probably like it. And I had to like get over that and watch it. And they can both exist in the world and I can like them both. And I don't know why I did that. It was illogical for me to do that.
I think a big part of it is that for fandoms of those shows, they're usually kind of repulsive. And so you like hear the stories of like Rick and Morty fans or South Park fans, and what you hear about them is like the outlier cases where they're pretty intense and pretty crazy, and in ways that you're like, I don't want to be part of that. And so then the show gets tied to that identity, and they're like, well, why would I want to be part of that?
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know if I had an awareness of the identity of people who like these shows. Like I could imagine what Trekkies do. They have conferences and stuff like that. But I don't know what like a Rick and Morty fan looks like.
Gets on the counter of a McDonald's and has a tantrum about Szechuan sauce.
I feel like the perceived audience plays a big role for me in whether I am like incentivized to watch a show or not. Like I feel like a big reason why South Park never really seemed that appetizing to me is because it seemed like it appealed to kind of the lowest common denominator of, okay, the people who are going to be entertained by poop and fart jokes and swearing a lot and like shock humor and if I'm like, that's the type of person who's going to be entertained by this, and that doesn't really appeal to me. So then I'm like, you know,
yeah. See, this is a point of frustration for South Park fans.
Even if there's a ton of that type of humor, that doesn't bother me. If there's other stuff in there that's really good, as there is in this movie, and we'll get into that. But I think that like the fact that it seems to rely so heavily on that stuff,
that's what's so frustrating as a South Park fan, because you hear people say that. You hear people say, "Well, isn't that show just about like poop and farting and swearing?" And it's like that's it. It's just like a crude show, and it's funny because it's crude. It's like no.
But like
that's just like the surface level.
There's a diamond in the rough, but there is the rough.
It's not a diamond. No, I bet I could curate for you like 3 episodes that would make you a believer. If you watch the Washington Redskins episode, the Walmart episode, and
I think World of Warcraft, that's like the quintessential.
You think?
I think so.
Maybe. I had another. Oh, the gentrification Kenny's house
like
episode.
Even this, after watching this movie and like having a slightly more positive opinion of South Park after this, I'm still like, I don't want to.
I don't care.
You don't care. You're gonna watch them.
Thanks to Secret Lab for sponsoring this video. Secret Lab chairs are designed to keep you comfortable for those long nights of work and play in World of Warcraft. Their Titan Evo 2022 series chair offers 4-way lumbar support, comes with a magnetic memory foam head pillow, and is offered in different upholsteries like hybrid leatherette, soft weave fabric, and Napa leather, the official leather of South Park. Just joking. Best of all, a 5-year extended warranty is included along with a 49-day return policy, so you're covered if anything goes wrong, like Mr. Hanky the Christmas Pooh stamps on it or something. Just joking, that's probably not covered. Learn more about Secret Lab at lmg.gg/secretlabtjm.
Did they make the man bear pig in the Secret Lab?
Good question.
I did a reference.
Nice.
The man bear pig? Your emphasis was all wrong. It's hilarious. Hilariously wrong.
Man bear pig? Man bear pig?
Yeah. Man bear pig.
So sorry.
All right, do the synopsis.
Oh, that was it? Here's the synopsis. Stan, Kyle, Cartman, and Kenny are 8-year-old kids in Colorado, obsessed with Canadian comedic duo Terrence and Phillip. After seeing their R-rated movie Asses of Fire, the boys begin swearing constantly, as do kids across the country. Imitating a scene from the movie, Kenny burns himself to death while trying to ignite his farts and is sent to hell, where he meets Satan and his abusive partner, Saddam Hussein. Saddam. I was trying to emphasize the first syllable. To save the children, Kyle's mother, Sheila, creates the group Mothers Against Canada, convincing the government to arrest Terrence and Phillip as war criminals. In retaliation, Canada bombs the Baldwins in their mansion, prompting the United States to declare war.
You missed me!
Declare war on Canada. Meanwhile, Sheila allows Cartman to be implanted with an experimental V chip that shocks him whenever he swears. What's the V for? Did you...
Let me look it up.
No
that was a real
knows.
thing in TVs.
Virginity?
Oh, is it a censorship chip that like blocks us swearing in TVs?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. We'll find out.
But I don't know what it means.
The U.S. announces a plan to execute Terrence and Phillip during a USO show, spilling innocent blood on American soil. Was that what it is? Which Satan recognizes as a sign of the apocalypse. So he prepares to invade Earth when the Canadians die. Kenny's ghost visits Cartman to warn him, so the currently living boys form a resistance movement to save Terrence and Phillip. But their operation fails, and though Canada invades to stop the execution, Sheila shoots Terrence and Phillip, triggering Satan's invasion. Saddam usurps Satan, but he is eventually stopped by Cartman, whose control chip malfunctions, allowing him to unleash electric attacks by cursing. To thank Kenny for his support, Satan grants him one wish, which he uses to turn everything to a pre-war state. This selfless act grants him entry to heaven in the big musical finale. Sorry, I was just laughing because I really appreciated the juxtaposition. Is that the portrayal of Satan as like this like sensitive, kind soul, and he's like, what do you wish, child?
I just like when he goes to heaven and like the population is 1,000, and then he goes to hell and it's like almost 100 billion people.
Yeah,
to everyone else.
Yeah.
Right. It's like no one gets there.
It's only the Mormons.
The Mormons had it right.
Are these guys Mormons? I read one of their biographies and I was like, what? No, he's not. But they're from Colorado, where there's a
I think
bunch of Mormons?
they have exposure to Mormon people, and that's why they ended up writing Book of Mormon.
Right.
Because
it seems like they talk about Mormons a lot.
Well, they're obsessed. There's a whole episode even before Book of Mormon came out. That's a really good episode too.
Yeah, the Joseph Smith episode.
Dum 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 dum.
You know, it's another great. Let's just do this whole episode of this show. Will be. You should watch the Giant Douche Turd Sandwich episode.
No, see, that's when I have a problem with South Park. I think that South Park is partially responsible for Trump winning the election.
Well, that episode was pre-Trump.
Whoa.
That was pre-Trump.
Here we go.
Yeah, that episode's like, what race are they even talking about? I think it was even pre-Obama.
Oh, like Mitt Romney.
I feel like you could still make the
George
argument
Bush.
because I want you to make the argument because I think it's interesting.
I think that South Park promotes apathy and is definitely complicit in pushing forward the narrative of like, everyone's shit, all politics is bullshit, why even engage?
It's the bad form of
No.
moderate
The thrust of that episode
politics.
is not to not engage. It's like you still need to vote.
But I think that most people don't necessarily interpret it that way. Like I remember the whole. I'm.
But that was
jaded about
that was Stan's thing. The whole the whole narrative thrust of that episode was Stan doesn't want to vote because it's between a giant douche and a turned savage, so they kick him out of town.
But I think like later on when it's the Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump series, like there's a whole like season where there's like more serialized, and that one it's like they're just like everyone sucks. And I think that even if like they do try and make a statement at the end, I think a lot of people interpret it as, oh man, all politics is bullshit, everyone sucks. And I think like that's a mistake. And I think that's a reason why South Park has sort of fallen out of being an important criticism of our modern culture. Is it like it didn't pick a side. It kind of always wanted to be like out there, like just like throwing shit at everyone. And like, I don't know how much in the current state of like
politics,
the politicization of all media, that stands. So it's like South Park kind of is outside, and I think that's a strength of it. But I also think that it has nothing to stand for except everyone's stupid.
It is very interesting because I feel like when did it start? 1997, and I feel like that was a time when. Things weren't. I mean, obviously, like politics was still a huge part of society, but I think that was a time in which you could get away with political commentary that didn't take a side, as you say, because things weren't as polarized. But now, in a time when things are so polarized, if you don't like telegraph that you're saying something offensive, but it's okay because you're on the right side or whatever. That's not acceptable now. You can't sit in the middle and throw things equally because that's seen as like you're making the problem worse. Yeah. Like there's these piles of shit on two sides and you're sitting in the middle continuing to throw shit at the two sides. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like you do something more productive, start shoveling the shit off.
Well, I think it's hard too because South Park is so topical.
And wait, I wanted to say though, because I view myself as a moderate. Centrist is a bad word, but I have strong positions and strong opinions on things that aren't just whatever, man, both sides are fine, but like, so I'll say that as someone in the middle, there is a space to give those opinions and to contribute constructively to the discourse without just saying, yeah, but they're shit and they're both shit and everything's shit. So what's the point?
Yeah.
I don't know that South Park is completely. Yeah, they usually do, just like The Simpsons does, like kind of aim it at everyone. But I still think that there's like in many of the episodes, it's pretty clear where they stand. Like for example, they've had some like anti-trans kind of narratives in some of their episodes. I don't think that anyone in that community would say, well, they're obviously in the middle of this issue. And then there's their anti-climate change stance. Actually, they had to recant the whole man-bear-pig thing is a denial of climate change. And then in later seasons, they said we were wrong.
Yeah, man-bear-pig is real.
They had like a whole apology episode.
The man-bear-pig is them basically saying like people are freaking out too much about climate change?
Yeah, it's like it's Al Gore saying, I'm super serial, you have to believe me, man-bear-pig is real. And it's not. And then later on, and years later, basically, Member Pig is real, and it fucked everybody up.
Right.
And everyone had to apologize to Al Gore in an episode.
Yeah. Nice. That's kind of fun, I guess.
Anyways,
I think though, like I think I would say, like, the anti-trans episode is hard to watch these days. The crux of it is basically like they do different types of, like, I identify as a black man, I identify as a dolphin.
Is this where the attack helicopter thing came from?
I don't think so. I don't think
okay.
so. But Kyle wants to be a basketball player, but he's short and white, so he's like, I want to be black, so he gets, like, surgery to be black. And then at first Kyle's dad is like, that's horrendous, and then the doctor's like, well, don't you want to be something else? He's like, I've always wanted to be a dolphin.
Oh my god!
And so he gets surgery to become a dolphin, and it's pretty like
that episode's actually hilarious. That wasn't the episode I was talking about. I was talking about the Macho Man Randy Savage one.
Oh, I don't remember that one.
It's newer, and it's basically there's a person who's like looks like Macho Man Randy Savage and is just actually huge.
Yeah,
it's like, I'm gonna crush you. Just huge, juiced up person who identifies as a woman and like just crushes everybody in sports.
Oh, I see. Right. Wait, that is a current one that is seen as... Well, I mean, I feel like the trans sports issue is a whole nother thing, but we won't get into that.
Well, this episode is about the movie from the 90s. It's way before all this.
Oh, okay. We haven't even talked about this movie, really.
Let's talk about the
saying.
good stuff, the music.
Yes.
I think the music is friggin' awesome
The
in this
music
movie.
is 100% the strongest part of this movie.
Yeah, normally in musicals these days, when music starts, you're like, ugh. But in this movie, you're like, nice, let's go.
I mean, like, it's like... It's not immediately, like, it doesn't immediately blow you away because all of the songs are just, like, parodies of the cliche musical style. And, like, there's not really a ton of, like, innovation in the music. But there were some points where I was like, this is, like, a surprisingly
it's bona fide,
well-written, well-performed song, both in terms of like the lyrics and the music and the structure of it, and how like they have multiple parts kind of coming in and overlapping with each other.
At the climax there, when they have all the songs meld together.
I love those.
Oh yeah, I mean I think that the Satan's like I want to be up there or whatever.
Yeah.
It was the one that really. I was like, oh, this is good.
I love when he like kicks into that higher register.
Yeah.
So awesome.
It was so good. The music was strong.
Yeah, and tells the story. One thing that's interesting is like the movie is constant swearing, but in any of the songs there's very little swearing. It's only in the Satan song that there is any like obscenities.
Well, no, there's also that one with Mackie when they're like,
that's fair.
Don't say fuck. You don't say fuck. No.
But in the other ones, it's like kind of has a wholesome feel, and I think that helps to serve the movie. There's like an earnestness that's bought with the music.
Especially that first episode that's describing how the town is today before Terrence and Phillip.
Yeah.
You see homeless people, but you just don't care.
Yeah.
That's so awesome. He just jumps over them.
Yeah, all the songs are so memorable. I can sing them all. And part of that is I listened to the soundtrack a bunch when I was younger, but
I always love the way that the Kyle's Mom's song ends with that little like scat breakdown. He's like da 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 da, yeah, and he's just like doing jazz hands.
Well, that song's from this show too. Like I didn't realize when I did a big rewatch, I don't know, like 10 years ago. There's an episode where that they sing that, and it's before the movie.
Really?
Yeah,
I don't remember that.
It's like it's a redone version. This is a better version though. I love it. It's so good.
What was the other thing? Oh, okay. So let's talk about the commentary, I guess, because right away they start talking about this Terrence and Phillip thing, and I'm like, because I knew nothing about this movie going in, and I obviously I knew not a ton about South Park, so right away I'm like, oh, okay. So is this Terrence and Phillip thing is immediately obvious as an analogy for South Park itself. Mm-hmm. How do you guys feel about the fact that like the main point of the movie is to like defend itself? Like the point, it's to defend South Park and their style of humor.
Yeah, well, which
I thought was like, hey, this is an important point about like censorship and all that stuff, but it also feels like this is the most important thing that you had to say. Because go ahead.
Well, I can see why they would do that, because their struggle against the Motion Picture Association of America is going to be something they deal with every week, right? They're like going to be on a first name basis with these people, talking to them on the phone.
Yeah.
But like what they can and cannot do. So they spell out that initialism right at the beginning when they're buying the tickets. The Motion Picture Association of America says you have to be this old to see this movie. And then I think it's pretty clear that they set up themselves as like Terrence and Phillip is an analog that stands in for South Park.
Yeah.
I think they do that with that joke where Cartman's trying to justify why they don't need to see the movie.
Oh, yeah.
He's like, yeah, the animation's all crappy.
Yeah.
And then it shows their shitty animation. So it's like, that's a pretty clear link that TMP stands for, like in a meta sense, stands for South Park.
I think the reason, or one of the reasons it works for me, is that they're never unwilling to take a shot at themselves. Like Terrence and Phillip is never presented as anything other than utter crap.
Yeah,
Right.
you see all the adults leave the theater.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
What do you expect? They're Canadian.
But I still find it funny.
That is racist. That is racist, man.
I love that they're like in the TMP movie when it like full screens and they're having that like fart up. just like still. See, that's the great thing about South Park is like you get, for me, to laugh at the fart jokes.
See,
and you get
They give the
commentary.
context. That
but
allows
honestly,
you to-
like that's the thing. Like I'm watching this and I'm like open to it, right? And then they start doing the fart musical number, and like I'm not laughing. I have kind of like a that's funny. They're doing a whole musical with farts. Okay.
See, because you claim to like absurdist comedy. But like, so,
I like-
so when I see like ass is a fire and the cover is just like an ass, like his bare ass, I'm like, the ridiculousness of it is funny.
To me, there's a big difference between absurdist comedy, which this definitely is, like it's overlapping, but I feel like absurdist comedy is a broad category in terms of like what you can do. There's so many different things you can do. And South Park does branch out somewhat, but for the most part, they kind of stay close to this sort of like, what are the funny words? Ass.
How
cock.
do you know this? You haven't
Shit.
even seen any of it.
Well,
How do you know that?
I'm only talking about this movie, okay? I can only talk about this movie. So when I say South Park,
Okay, the movie.
Yeah, hear the movie. Yeah. So like as far as this movie goes, it seems like it is absurd, but it's like only absurd in a specific way. And I feel like I love when people just like when something just comes completely out of left field, and when it's like, oh, here's a shocking thing. They're doing a whole musical number with farts. I'm just kind of like, this isn't as shocking because this is like totally on brand for you, you know?
But I think
Okay.
we already laughed at one of the jokes that is absurd, and it's like bombing the Baldwins. Like
That was
America's
funny.
Treasure. So I think the movie
That was
does
funny.
a little bit of both. And I
Yes.
think I hear what you're saying, but I think because the movie is trying to make such a point about censorship, it would be weakened if they did stray away from the obscenity, from like the fart jokes. Like that's the point, is like, hey, we're making a movie that has value because we're making a movie that's completely shit.
Yeah.
But you have to watch it because we need to be allowed to express ourselves.
Right.
The thing that's weird about it, though, and even more meta, is that this movie itself is subject to the MPAA's ratings, so they couldn't do what they wanted to do to the full extent they wanted to do it. So, for example, the Winona Ryder USO show when she's shooting those ping pong balls, they didn't have the bit where it cuts or reverse shots back to her with the ping pong racket going, okay, I hit every one. They didn't have that. They put that in to placate the MPAA.
It's way funnier too, though.
With
It
the
is
ping
fun.
pong paddle?
With the ping pong paddle. Yeah, it's kind of just like stupid.
Why is everyone shocked? Because she's just showing between her legs while she's hitting.
No,
it?
it's just so
the
amazing.
implication was that she was shooting them out of her vagina.
obviously.
That's why they're all shocked.
Yes, but she wasn't. She was hitting
No.
them all with the paddle. So why are they shocked?
Well, that's just an audience inferior kind of joke. Why are they all shocked? I don't know. That she's so accurate with hitting them. Who knows? That doesn't matter. That
But
doesn't matter.
I feel like it's still implied that she like flashes them.
I don't think so.
No?
I think that
it's the way she's sitting, like her legs are open, but we don't know that she's like not wearing underwear or something.
that was funny. I laughed at that part.
I
I wrote down all the parts I laughed at.
Give us another one.
I think the first time I actually like did giggle was when the whole school is getting in on like the swearing epidemic, and they were like over the announcer, the principal's like, we're banning all Terrence and Phillip merch, and the girl lifts her tray up and it says Cockmaster on it. And I realized, I'm like, oh, I think I like the sight gags more in this movie than I do the like written stuff. Although there are some lines.
There's some good sight gags, like kind of in the background. They'll be like at the doctor's office, it says like, Dr. No kills James Bond or something. Like that's like the next appointment. Is like so there's like good little side jokes in the background and stuff.
I appreciate all that stuff. There was the next part I think I really laughed at was when they're watching TV or they're grounded, I think. And who is that that's babysitting them? It's one of their sisters.
That's Stan's sister,
Oh, yeah.
Shelly.
Yeah. So
Shut up,
she's
kid.
like, all right, you guys can't have any fun. But does she say any questions or something? And then Stan is like,
Shelly, what's the clitoris?
Where's the clitoris? And then there's just silence, and she like walks over and grabs a chair and comes and just breaks it on him.
Yeah, she's always beating the shit out of them.
That was funny.
I think there's some good jokes. Like when they're like giving the plan for the military, like, you know, like we're gonna put all the black people in the front, and then we're gonna have Operation Hide Behind the Darkies behind them. And he's like,
right.
Have you heard of the Emancipation Proclamation? He's like, I don't listen to hip hop.
I actually think that is one of the funniest jokes. It's
That's
like
a
an
good
underrated joke. It's like that is such a good joke.
Because it sounds like a rap album or a rap group or something.
Yeah.
You ever heard of the Emancipation Proclamation? That is so funny. That's like that joke is like transcends the movie. It's like everyone should know that joke.
Yeah.
Such a good joke.
I saw that scene held up as a poignant bit of commentary, not only because it's like the U.S. still doesn't care about black people, but because in contrast to what they seem to really, really, really care about, which is no swearing on TV or movies or whatever. They're willing to go to war with our neighbor over kids swearing.
Well, that's
ironic,
throughout the
but
movie.
they will still throw black people in front of the bullets.
Well,
and
I think
stuff.
it's ironic because the States is known to hide obscenities, but like allow violence, like extreme violence on TV.
They talk about that throughout the movie. The Canadians say it when they're talking on the news to Sheila too. They're like, we don't get why you do all this violence, but a little foul language and you're so pissed off.
Yeah.
And then Sheila also calls TMP evil while like they're committing all these atrocities, and then she shoots him in the head. The question of what is evil is kind of throughout.
I like V-chip is the violent. It's for violence, so it's like specifically designed to like remove violence. It seems like it was predominantly not an American.
Wait, but this is a
thing.
chip in TVs?
Yeah, so you would like turn it on.
How
Using
would
television set receivers in Canada, Brazil, and the United States. Blocking of programs based on the ratings category.
Oh.
So it would just basically like prevent you from watching
The whole show.
I guess so.
And the show's signal would have some information that can be detected by the...
Probably.
How would it detect it? This is like pre...
I mean,
There's a lot of metadata that was encoded into like each frame. That's why there's like overscan.
Yeah,
like
so
there's,
like,
right. Yeah.
all it takes is one little red pixel.
I thought that was like a good issue to bring up. The fact that like, you know, swearing is treated as this horrible thing that must be blocked. But like we have action movies with like people getting gruesomely murdered, and that seems to be totally fine.
I wonder what the crux of that is.
Christianity.
No, but why is it? Because there's definitely a Christian bend to it, and it's recognized in this film. At the beginning opening song, you kind of go through. You're introduced to all the characters, including the mothers, and two of the mothers, Sheila and Stan's mom. They both speak to like this child is innocent. Their mind is pure, but they're suggestible, and so that purity aspect of it. I think that it connects strongly to the Christianity aspect, but why is it from like a boots on the ground? Like, why would they allow? Why does Christianity claim like hate swearing more than they hate violence?
No, I don't think so.
I think so though. I think the American exceptionalist Christianity, and I think that's what's on being roasted in this movie, not broader Christianity.
Yeah.
And I think that's based around the idea of like when you read the Bible, there's an interpretation of like, oh, God is totally for violence when it's protecting your people, or you know, if you're God's chosen people, it's okay to go to war and like, you know, kill all these other people because, you know, you're God's chosen people.
They're pretty into gore.
Yeah,
like,
the Bible's very violent.
The symbol you wear on a necklace is a dude hanging there. That's New Testament shit.
That's Catholics, man.
What?
Yeah, they
wearing a cross?
No, wearing the cross with Jesus on it.
With Jesus on it.
Yeah, that's
okay.
Most Christians, it's just the cross. But it's still a symbol of execution. It's like wearing an electric chair around
Yeah.
the neck.
Here's another. That's bizarre.
Well, I mean, the reason that I feel like it's weird, like I think that for sure American Christianity seems to have like I don't know, they've fucked it up for sure. Like there's no reason if you were to start Christianity from scratch from like the Bible, there would be nothing that would indicate that like swearing is worse than brutally murdering people, you know?
Well, I mean, doesn't Jesus say, like, all sin is equal? Or like if you do one thing, you've done it all? Like,
right. So like, to me, it's interesting that the movie makes the argument that, like, okay, well, we allow violence, so what's the big deal with this stuff? Because to me, I would kind of come at it from the other side and be like, all right, we should probably stop children from, you know, swearing their heads off all the time. If that's like, either we want swear words in society or we don't. If we don't want any swear words, then, you know, all language is fine. We don't want to, like, protect the children's ears or whatever, and they can say everything, but then we won't have any special words we can use.
Yeah, well, swearing doesn't matter at all.
Yeah,
right? It's like it's completely arbitrary.
Well, exactly. Well, there are an arbitrary set of words in our society that we say are curse words.
It's kind of like you usually reserve those for packing a lot of emotion, right? So if you're saying you're against swearing, it's kind of just like, I don't want to hear anyone speak so strongly with such emotion. Like you want like a sterilized
and because
world.
To me, it's like, okay, if we normalize swearing and we have absolutely, like, what's the big deal with swearing? Swearing should be allowed. There shouldn't be ratings based on swearing. Then it's like, okay, well then fuck is just going to be the new frickin', you know?
Yeah.
And when people say, I am frickin' upset, you're not like, oh shit. You're like, okay.
Well, it's like this a little more like in Europe.
But when someone's like, I'm fucking pissed, you're like, damn, okay, I'm sorry. Like, I'll listen.
You'll see like ass and shit like in advertisements, like on a poster at a bus stop.
Right.
In like Iceland and stuff.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But over here, you would never see that.
Yeah.
You'd see ass, but like the Icelandic version, or is that what you're saying?
No, there's a lot of English there, but just like in Europe in general, that they're less puritanical about that stuff.
But they do have swear words.
Yeah,
but that's what I'm confused about. Because
I'm just saying the line is over that direction a little bit.
I feel like the allowing violence is more dangerous than
for
swear
sure.
words. Because I think
obviously,
I think like. I don't really believe if you watch like a show about serial killers, you're going to become a serial killer. If you watch a ton of violence, you're going to be like prone to more violence. But I think there is a desensitization effect. And I want to propose a crazy conspiracy theory.
Okay.
That it is the military-industrial complex that is pushed for, you know, the promotion of violence in TV to allow for young men to be, you know, like believe that hero with a gun vision of themselves to join the military and be like, I'm a hero because I've been desensitized to violence. This, I have no proof, but
this is possible. Although I'd like to offer a counter thesis, which I think is more likely, and I think it's just that it sells. I think it's just you're getting more, and I think the swearing doesn't, and that's probably the crux of the issue. Nobody goes, I want to see shows that have lots of swearing.
Donkey raping shit eater.
That's like not a selling point for people, but they do want to see shows with lots of exciting explosions and shit. Like
that's fair.
Yeah,
because that's exciting to watch. So I think it just sells tickets, and that's why it's allowed.
Fair. And simple good versus evil, where the good guys get to decimate evil, sells a lot better than, you know, morally gray people choosing pacifism.
Yeah. And I mean, I think we have to remember while we're having this conversation, we're primarily just talking about kids, because it's like when it comes to adults, you can watch whatever you want. Like we're not worried about adults seeing violent content. And
we are at a certain point. We are. You don't see like a movie that has hardcore pornography in it. You don't see like snuff films aren't legal. There's a limit.
Well, I mean, they wouldn't be allowed in theaters, but they're still.
Yeah, why not?
Because we don't want that to be broadly. I mean,
exactly.
But this comes back to
there's a limit.
This comes back to my argument about, or my thought experiment about, if you remove all taboo limits from society, is there anything that's like special or like? I think, like, to me, I feel like adults choosing to do what they want to do with their time is totally fine. You know, I don't think that there should be any legal limits on what an adult wants to do if they want to do that. You know, you want to watch porn, you want to do drugs, blah blah blah. You know, like go for it. But I think that there still needs to be these like taboos in broader society. Otherwise, there's nothing special. Like. And kids have easier access to all of this stuff. And it's like we have to... so to me, it's really about the kids. At the end of the day, think of the children.
So here's a thought experiment for you. Would you be in favor of the following object being legal? Child-sized sex dolls.
God damn, dude. What the fuck?
By your logic, you're an adult.
I wasn't ready for this conversation.
By your logic, you're an adult. You're over 18. You can buy a mannequin that is built for having sex with that resembles a child. Specifically resembles a child.
You should be legal, but you should be put on a list, and the police should be tailing you at all times.
Or like in China, they would just be like, "No, it's just not for sale."
Yeah.
I feel like,
and I actually don't think it should be for sale. But
to me, so I haven't thought enough about this issue to give like a strong position. But to me, it kind of comes down to whether you are primarily your ethics are utilitarian or virtue ethics. I'm not leaving deontologists out of it because they're just going to say no 100%. But from a utilitarian perspective, if there is data that shows that providing these types of
like it's a harm reduction strategy
materials to pedophiles would reduce real children being raped or molested, then from a utilitarian perspective, you're like, yeah, why not? Just give it to them if it means less children being abused.
But what happens?
But from a virtue ethics perspective, you would say that it is virtuous to not even entertain those desires at all. And instead of like satiating pedophiles, we should rather work to reform them into not pedophiles anymore. And so... See, I think that's where I lean more towards that.
So you want this child/sex dolls to be distributed like methadone?
No, I don't want them to be distributed. I think that pedophiles should go to therapy and work through their irrational, weird attraction to children. I don't think that it's a sexual orientation like other sexual orientations.
No,
it's fucked.
Yes, I think it's tough though, because you're saying like from a utilitarian perspective, if we have the data to know if we allow this, will it prevent real world crime or it won't? Like the problem is there's studies that show both. Like there's studies that show like what you like in pornography, you'll push further into and you're going to go crazy.
It would be both. It would be a normal curve or something, right? For most of them, it's keeping them out from doing darker things, but for some of them, it pushed them further into it.
Right.
It normalized it.
I mean, that's a whole. I've actually listened to whole like hours long conversations about this topic.
Huh.
Kind of weird, Riley.
Well, it's a thing online. Like, there's a whole category of people, like pedophiles are trying to rebrand themselves as minor attracted persons, MAPs.
Oh no!
Yeah, so like, there's sort of a push to frame pedophilia as a sexual orientation, like being gay or whatever. And I'm not on that train.
Actually, I don't know if I'm against that, as long as it comes with the caveat of like, we're identified as, this is how our brains work. It's not okay, but this is how our brains work. As long as we don't lose the "it's not okay" part.
I remember listening to
I don't mind the
American
distinction.
Life, where there's a group of people that identify as pedophiles in the sense that they have the attraction for children.
The North American Man-Boy Love Association, South Park. Boom, South Park did it.
No, but they know it's wrong, and they've dedicated their energies to preventing it from like propagating into the real world, which I think is kind of interesting, kind of noble, but also pretty dangerous. You know, if you're at risk to put yourself like right in the firing lane,
the tip of the spear.
Yeah. I'm not going to say that I don't have empathy for people like this who experience these attractions and know that it's wrong and like are conflicted because they're like, I want to participate in society. At the same time, it's like incredibly difficult because how can I do that and not feel the need to, I don't know, molest? But like, to me, it's just like, it just comes down to consent. Like, even if you are really attracted to a certain thing, that doesn't mean that you molest people.
So you're saying that every
like even
person on the planet has to deal with these consent issues.
Yes,
you
exactly.
can be attracted to something that's completely sanctioned, like a heterosexual relationship with someone of your same age. That doesn't mean that you just get to.
Right. You don't get to just kind of like cross their consent boundary because you really, really think they're super hot. Like that's not how it works. So I feel like to me the virtuous path here is to say, okay, look, I'm really sorry that you're dealing with this issue, as long as you recognize that is like obviously wrong, which is like you obviously need to, let's work together to try and like reduce these feelings, reduce your symptoms, find a way for you to like integrate into society. But at a base level, it's just like so obvious.
Sex doll be the way?
No, because to me that is like validating the desire or the need.
To play pedo's advocate here.
Jesus
God
fucking
damn.
Christ.
Well,
I love
because
how
you're
this,
saying that
this podcast has just turned into this.
devolved.
Now that it's over, we're like,
Well,
we'll
this is
talk
fine,
about
that's
anything
fine.
we fucking want.
Because
Everyone
you're
watches the
saying
movie, they
that,
think it's funny, and
every person on the planet has to deal with this consent thing, right? But for people who have attractions that are sanctioned, you can, let the pressure out of the teapot by, having interaction with some consensual interaction.
Right,
not all of your interactions that you want to have will be consensual, but some are, and that helps you live. But for these people, zero of the interactions they want to have are consensual. So the child-sized sex doll helps them let off some steam.
I think that they can make themselves feel good without a child-sized sex doll.
Hear, hear. Indeed.
They can figure it out. Anyways, I feel like let's bring it back to.
They're allowed their imaginations.
Why did you bring this up again? Because of
to straw man your argument?
Straw man. Well, what was my argument?
I don't remember.
It was we were talking about the swearing versus violence.
Oh, here's another example of this in the movie.
Okay.
They do the newscast and they're like. They're talking about the Terrence and Phillip movie, Asses of Fire is destroying American youth. Here to tell you all about it is a midget in a bikini.
Dude, what? I missed that part. Where does that happen?
Right after the...
I don't know, in the first third.
Oh man, I must have been writing something.
So it's just another part of okay, we'll just totally belittle this person.
Right. Yeah, see, so I think the argument that I was making was basically if you're identifying this, if you have a problem with the way the current things are, where it's swearing is over protected and violence is allowed more, then to me the solution to that is okay, well then I guess you want to reduce violence in kids' movies. To me, instead of being you're being hypocritical, now we're gonna make a movie with as many F words as we can and cockmaster on a shirt. To me, I'm not saying that this way of doing it is invalid, but I feel the more consistent thing would be to also say, hey, well, violence is more dangerous, so let's reduce the
you're
violence.
saying that Trey Parker and Matt Stone, rather than making a movie that has a lot of swearing to push the boundary, what they should do is try to remove violence from other movies.
Well, not remove violence, but have a message where they're saying, hey, maybe we don't need as much violence.
Well, that's part of this.
I think,
although it's a very violent, it's a violent movie as well.
It's extremely violent. I think the main message is not that we need less violence. The main message is, why do we care so much about violence, or why do we care so much about swearing? Wait, what is it?
Yeah, why do we care so much about swearing when violence is probably just as bad?
It seems like the main goal of this is to get people to care less about swearing.
To me, your argument sounds kind of like when. Why does Elon Musk want to spend so much money going to Mars? We have problems here at home. Why doesn't he spend his money on curing cancer? It's because he's not a cancer researcher. He's an engineer type.
I think that's a total valid criticism.
I don't, because people want to work on what they want to work on.
Right.
And these guys want to make this absurdist comedy art.
Well,
they don't want to be advocates for less violence.
But then don't pretend like you're a big, you're solving Earth's problems. You're not.
Well, I think the Mars colony in particular is such a. It's not a real.
Okay, well then
goal.
just make it about NASA budget.
Sure.
Hey, I like space stuff. I love space stuff.
You like space sex?
I think that,
sex in space.
Absolutely. I think that there should be more government funding for that kind of thing, and it has been completely defunded since
it was
80s,
exposed the
90s.
moon landing was fake.
This isn't the point of this thought experiment. It's just a comparison.
It's real.
It's been defunded, and I think that there should be more government funding for that kind of thing. I think that in the absence of government funding, we've gotten all these private companies, which is okay, they're filling the gap there, but at the same time, I'm fine with them pursuing that as long as they don't pretend that they're saving humanity. If you're just kind of hey, we're advancing rocket technology because it's fucking cool.
Yeah, but that's Elon Musk's brand. And so that's right. It's not that it's necessarily he believes that he's really doing it. He proposes shit specifically to close down other viable technologies. Hyperloop was never a real thing. He just wanted to prevent high-speed travel or high-speed trains from being built. And propose a stupid futurist idea that will never work.
So I've looked a little bit into this stuff, and I don't want to say that that's 100% the case with Hyperloop. I know that Elon pushed it in that specific instance for sure to stop them from making more affordable rail, which is shitty as hell. But I will say that I don't know enough about the background of how these technologies work and the work done on them to say that Hyperloop was 100% a scam, or that, Tesla, a lot of people that think that Tesla isn't actually helping anything because it's like in whatever it's helping, it's hurting in other areas. But I don't know.
I don't want to get into the morality of, Tesla selling carbon offset tax as their main source of revenue or whatever. But like it's a lot of futurism is total bullshit, and it exists to get investors and not actually provide a real solution. Right. We have the fucking solutions, man. Like build trains, build better public transit, design cities to be walkable and more dense in certain parts. Like quit sprawling out. Like we don't need futurist solutions. We need to be practical, be pragmatic.
How about that part where Conan O'Brien killed himself?
Okay, yeah.
That was pretty awesome. I like when...
Who?
Conan O'Brien. Did you miss that part too?
Yeah.
He like jumps out the window and smashes that car, and then the guy comes out and turns off the alarm. Beep, beep.
When you do this, you have to like give a little bit of a segue. You have to be like, "We're on a tangent. Let's get back."
Nah,
you have to say that.
That just takes longer. We're back now.
No, because then I do this. I feel the need to say this.
Please, can I finish?
Suppress that need.
The Conan part.
That's what a good person would do.
The Conan part I wrote down as giving me a little chuckle. I was like, oh, what have I done? Ah! I also love Conan, so that was it tugged at my...
Was that his voice? Was he in it?
No, it was the guy who plays Data on Star Trek.
Spinner?
Yeah.
Spinner? Is it Spinner?
Yeah, he was doing the Conan voice. Although there are real celebrity...
George Clooney.
George
the doctor.
And that doctor is in lots of episodes, but he just has a normal South Park voice.
That was so funny because... he started talking and I was like, oh, that guy kind of sounds familiar. And I listened like some more and I'm like, is that fucking George Clooney? And then he said a few more lines. I'm like, that's George Clooney. It was so shocking to me.
Well, like in the show, the cat is voiced by like real celebrities. Like, so because people, when South Park was huge, people were like, I want to be on South Park. I want to do that. And he'd be like, yeah, for sure. And then they would get them to voice the cat. So like all the meows are like, not all of them, but
that's hilarious.
I think Jennifer Aniston was like a teacher in one of the episodes. We replaced your heart with a baked potato. It never gets any easier. He just leaves immediately.
One of my other favorite lines is from Mr. Garrison, where he's like, maybe your moms are upset or something. I forget what he's talking about, but the line is, well, I'm sorry, Wendy, but I just don't trust anything that bleeds for 5 days and doesn't die.
That is a problematic joke, but it is such a good joke.
What's problematic about it?
Well, it's just very sexist, but
I think the point is that Mr. Garrison is sexist.
Well, that's the thing with that character. He can say whatever he wants.
Yeah.
That joke is a classic. Me and my wife say it all the time. It's hilarious. That's a genius one.
Especially because he's like, it's not obvious in this one, but he's like secretly gay, right? And then later it's revealed.
You never really know with Garrison.
I just mean like that would sort of explain his distaste for women. He's not into women, so he's like, that would kind of go along with the...
I love when he's the anonymous executioner and it's him because he's just holding the Mr. Hat thing. You're like, that's obviously Mr. Garrison. That was awesome.
Right, I might be a little bit off on Mr. Kitty. So far, the only voice I can find for sure that voiced Mr. Kitty is Jay Leno.
Oh,
which is still a pretty good voice.
There's another thing that happens in this movie is the use of this one issue, the censorship issue, as a pretense to remove people's rights. Like they arrest Terrence and Phillip, they install the V chips in the kids, they go to war, all just based all around this one issue. It's similar to, that happens again and again in history. I guess the most notable one recently was the convoy thing, like all the COVID stuff for people who were afraid of losing their rights.
I think that's what, I mean, we sort of talked about it, but like this is why the core message of the movie falls flat for me a little bit, because they're talking about censorship, but the example they give is like kids sneaking in to see a movie that was rated not for kids. And so they're like, we should relax our censorship, but it's like, what you're describing doesn't make the argument that you wanted to make, because you're saying that we're censoring this stuff, but we're not. Adults can go in and watch the movie. But we're just saying that like 8-year-olds shouldn't go in and watch the movie. Is that so? Like, is that what they're saying? They're saying 8-year-olds should be able to watch whatever fuck they...
They were saying you already censored it sufficiently. You have the MPAA and you have this rating system, and you're not supposed to sell tickets to kids. So it's all good. You don't need to censor TMP any more than that. And then Broflovsky's saying, well, the kids saw it anyway. They were going to see it anyway, so it should just not exist.
Right, and I think, so, we're a bit removed from the cultural context that this movie came out. It was in 1999. And, I think that it was coming out of the 80s and 90s, there were a lot of moral panics about trends, drugs, things that were Dungeons and Dragons. Like there were.
That's why it's awesome that Satan's
the satanic
in this.
panic. Yeah. So like I think that as a reaction to those specific moral panics where people were using the excuse of children to justify, suppressing that stuff completely, instead of saying adults can watch it, just keep it out of the kids' hands. They're saying get it out of our culture altogether. And that's wrong. So like I can see it as a justified reaction to that.
Because it's a blunt tool, right? It's like, we can't have D&D.
Right.
We can't play Dungeons and Dragons or listen to heavy metal.
Right.
Like, what the fuck? Like they're overstepping.
I mean, Dungeons and Dragons specifically was like such a unjustified panic because it's like, it's a fucking game. Like it's like Tolkien. It's like a Tolkien-ish world with like.
Yeah, but that extends so. Like I think I've relayed the story before. I was babysat by a fairly devout Christian family as a kid, and I remember the little girl crying because all her friends at school, everyone was reading Harry Potter. Harry Potter was taking off. It was huge, and she wasn't allowed to read it because it has like witchcraft and wizardry in it. Yeah, and it's like, but
that was that's
fantasy.
That was a wild time. I mean,
if you believe in Noah's Ark and shit, it's like, why is that fantasy? Why is one fantasy and the other not? They're all not.
This is the funny thing, which is why I feel like it's always funny when we bring up like religion and Christianity because it's not a monolith, right? Like I grew up in a very, very, very Christian home, but they had absolutely no problem with me reading Harry Potter. Like, everyone was freaking out about it not everyone, but a lot of people in our circles were freaking out about it. And my mom was like, I don't know what the big deal is. She's like, it's magic.
A storybook.
It's like Narnia. It's like there's magic and people use it. Like Lord of the Rings has magic.
The argument of a Christian, which is a very rare thing I'll do.
Of a crazy Christian.
And I think this would be true of my own experience. It made the idea of magic in the real world really appealing. And I could see like a crazy Christian being like, oh, well, then my kid's going to seek out like Wiccan, or paganism or something like that because Harry Potter made magic in the real world look so cool.
Right.
And I think it's bullshit and I think it's super
and it's
fucking
aimed
stupid.
at kids.
Yeah, no, I like, obviously you can see the like logical progression of like, okay, we believe in, magical stuff. These are books about magic. It's gonna the bad type. Well, but like that's the funny thing. It's not even like the bad type of magic because like there are good wizards and bad wizards. I just feel like a lot of it comes just from misunderstandings and not only of the material that you're criticizing, but of your own belief system and like what that's based on. Because, anyways,
yeah, it's. I think it's just kind of prickly. It's like, okay, you can have that conversation with your kids. You can go like, hey man, hey child. No one can do magic except Jesus, okay? But then you're like...
Jesus went to Hogwarts. Jesus is the only Hogwarts
It gets
student.
more complicated then. You're like, well, why him? Well, he's the son of God. So it just gets more complicated.
Hogwarts is actually in heaven. And
I think it's harder to differentiate like which stories get to be real magic and which stories are fake magic than just being like, it's all fantasy.
Yeah.
Like that's all. You can't read that at all.
I think regardless, we can like see these moral panics as what they were, which is like panics over things that you didn't really need to worry about that much. And so again, I can see how the movie is the movie's criticism is somewhat justified as a reaction to that. I guess watching it in 2022 seems a little strange because we don't have the same type of moral panics about things like this today. I think.
Well, they're different, and I think like
they might exist, but they're smaller.
Well, like the trans panic, of groomers and like
sure,
the panic of trans athletes and stuff. Like there is panic.
Even China stuff. Sometimes I'm like, man, is China really that bad?
Yeah, but I think
it is. But
I guess
it's hard to know sometimes.
I guess the whole like groomer panic is focused on children.
Well, a lot of the panics are about children, right? Teaching.
What's the fallacy called of like think of the children? Like what's the real name of that?
Critical
fallacy?
race theory in schools. It's always the stuff in schools.
Yeah, but I guess But I think the important distinction here is that if I remember, Dungeons and Dragons was like if you're playing Dungeons and Dragons as an adult, no one's gonna like round up the. Right? Like back in the day?
They're coming for your dice.
I don't know. Because like now it's like, I feel like there's, at the same time as society has grown increasingly more and more and more accepting of trans people and, you know, that sort of category of on the fringe people, there's also this incredible pushback, particularly when it comes to kids. So it's like, it's a different situation. It's not exactly the same, but there's a lot of things like that still going on.
One other thing in this movie that I have to contextualize that was a huge deal to me in my little child brain when I watched it was the Kenny face reveal.
Oh, yeah.
We finally got to see Kenny's face at the end, and he spoke without being muffled, and that was just like, that was like one of the highlights that you would have relayed to the other school children. That happens in this movie. Watching on the rewatch, it's like, who cares?
Yeah. When you've seen his faces appeared in several of the shows.
Well, he just becomes like a non-character eventually. He dies for real, right? And then Butters kind of replaces him.
But he comes back.
Yeah, he does. How about this? Nitpicks. Man, you spoiled it.
So you mentioned the Stan throwing up thing was like not really a meme anymore. What is up with that? I was confused.
He just has a crush on her, and every time she approaches him or he's gonna talk to her, he just goes.
But he also throws up in the hospital. Is it just that like he's just a nervous guy and he just okay?
But it is specifically with Wendy. Like every time in the show they talk.
That was hilarious. The political, like maybe I can be political too. And she's like, "Hey Stan, what do you think I'm?" I was like, okay, that's funny.
I think Trey Parker just thinks that throwing up is funny. That's in Team America as well.
Oh, exactly, and that's. I'm trying to figure out who these guys are. I feel like it's really hard for me to watch content and not think about who made it. And so like the whole time when there's such like a strong theme of like gross out humor in something, I'm like, who are these guys? Why are you so obsessed with this? Like, because I looked them up and I'm like, the other stuff that they've done, at least I didn't really read up on Trey.
No, Trey Parker probably is the one you've read. He's done more.
No, I read, okay. Well, I read Matt Stone and his first thing was about like a cannibal. Yeah. And then the second film was Orgasmo, which is like a sex comedy. Baseball. Which was like, you know, trying to like be edgy. And then, so it's like, it's all about like trying to be the edgiest they can be. I just don't understand. I'm like, what?
Okay.
Where does that come from?
I think that like they've always been edgy. Like they went to, when they got nominated for the Oscar, they went in dresses high on acid.
But they were in drag.
And they were in drag.
They were wearing dresses, yeah.
I think that's just like who they are, is to be, you know, abrasive in that way. And I think it's worked really well for them.
On one hand, I really respect that because you're like, hey, you know, this like box that you've put around society, like fuck that. There's so many different ways to express ourselves and to, you know, be. So on one hand, I respect it, but on the other hand, I feel like there's like that can totally be an obsession where like you are unwilling to just chill. And just like, you know, be a normal person for a half a second. You know, it's like, because it's like, are you always trying to push the envelope? Because it's like, if that's all you are, is just a guy that pushes the envelope all the time, that's just as limiting, and you're putting yourself in just as much of a box as someone else.
This reminds me of an interview I saw once with the like guitarist from System of a Down, when the interviewer was asking them like, well, like, why do you make the music you do? Like, why do you think people like your music? What's behind your music? And he was basically like, we don't fucking know. We just played it, and then you guys showed up. Like, you bought it. All of you guys bought it. So it's the same thing here. It's like I think they launched off of making like a short cartoon of like Jesus fighting Santa
Jesus
or
versus
something.
Frosty, yeah. And then they made Jesus versus Santa.
Okay, so people liked it. So then they go, okay, I guess I'll make more of that. And then people bought that. And so it's like they're just like feeding the demand. It's so like when you're asking like who makes this, like why do they think puking so funny? It's like, well, everyone else thinks it's funny too. Like we all keep showing up, so they're not alone.
I guess that feeds into my criticism of them though, where it's like if the only thing driving your need to create content is the fact that like I made a silly thing and everyone laughed.
Well, that's clearly not the only thing.
I should up the ante. Well, I don't know. I mean, like. They made this show and then there was reaction to it. So instead of like doing something that like they made a movie about based on the show that they made, and the movie's whole message was you're caring too much about the show that we made and you're freaking out about it. So that's the message, is like about us. It's all so like self-centered and like you're not saying anything important. Like that.
Well,
as
my
we've
kind
said,
of argument there would be like,
don't wanna say
there's so
anything
many
important.
people want to watch this, but this regulator won't let it be. But like clearly the people that want it.
I feel like one of the strengths of South Park and Trey Parker and Matt Stone is that they captured the unspoken frustration of a generation. And there's a lot of what they portray in South Park where it was like, yeah, I do feel that. And I am pissed about that, but like no one's really said it out loud before. And by constantly pushing the envelope, sometimes they go too far. Sometimes they say stupid fucking shit. But sometimes they catch something and you're like, I am mad about that. And I think that's the strength of constantly pushing and constantly being annoyed by the world and showing that. And I think that's why I latched on to South Park, was like, oh yeah, I do feel that.
They're so good at precisely conveying the satire. Like there's a fairly recent episode about like gentrification where city people move to the small town to like buy it up, and all the city people are characterized so hilariously. They don't actually speak English, they just say little phrases. they drive Teslas and they just go like, metal water bottle. What are the other things they say? Have you seen that one?
I've seen it, yeah.
Oh fuck, it's hilarious.
I really appreciate that framing of like there is tension in society and it's not being expressed, and so we're going to make this movie and just kind of like break through that and just like put it in front of your face so you have to contend with it. And like broader society has to contend with it, and I appreciate that for sure. I think I guess my confusion comes from the fact that like this seems to be all that they do. Like
but you haven't seen it.
Huh?
You haven't seen it. You haven't seen enough of their stuff. You don't know what they do.
Well, I just mean they make South Park, and they made these movies before that were like also just kind of like edgy and trying to push the envelope. And like I haven't seen Book of Mormon, but I know that they've won a lot of awards.
It's I think the highest celebrated, or the most Tony Awards.
This is not meant to be like an attack on them, like totally. Like I don't think that they're shit. I gave the movie a 7 out of 10. I think that they have made a lot of good stuff and important things to say, but I think I'm just criticizing the fact that like when you lock yourself into this box of we're edgy and we're gonna push the boundaries, to me that is like you lose some points because you're locking yourself into the boundary of we're people that push the boundaries. Instead of like to me the band analogy, I think that was like an interesting story told. To me, like the analogy to me of like a better band would be one that like dabbles in multiple different genres, and they release one album that's like this and another album that's like a different sound, and you can identify that it's the same band, but like they broaden they expand into so many different areas, and it seems like these guys are just kind of like pushing on one side continually.
I think that there's like a little more dimension to what they do than what you recognize.
Sorry, I'm simplifying.
Yeah. And I hear what you're saying. I think that it's a shame that they haven't really branched out, because I think Book of Mormon is brilliant, and I think it's absolutely fantastic. And if they, pushed in that direction where it's still, expressing frustration with religion and like it's a satire of a specific thing, it would be better. It's like it's not as mean-spirited as South Park. South Park has like an edge and like a meanness to it, and I think it's Book of Mormon it doesn't feel like it's like mean about religious people. It's mean about the institution.
Yeah. At this point, I feel like the show, like they feel like they cashed in.
Yeah.
They got some huge deal, and they're not even doing the whole like 6 days to air thing anymore. No. They're just making these longer specials. So they're kind of just like sunsetting their careers, and the content.
Apparently, they signed a deal to do 15 more seasons though last year.
Yeah, but the seasons are just like 2 hour-and-a-half long movies.
Kind
of things.
Oh, okay.
That's what they tend to be, and they're kind of hit or miss. South Park's been hit or miss for like kind of like 8 years now.
Gotcha.
But anyways, it's metal water bottle, MacBook, Wi-Fi, La Croix. This is so awesome.
That's funny.
I have a hit pick somewhere. Oh, this is the wrong document. I have a hit pick. In the third. When they're breaking in to rescue Terrence and Phillip, the Zemo looks at his watch, and it says at the top of his watch, "Third act, the ticking clock."
No.
Okay.
That's pretty good.
Sight gags. Sort of a hit pick. Saddam was funny. I loved the characters. That whole thing was very the relationship there was really funny. But it's just.
I think Saddam's in the show for a bit.
Is Saddam supposed to be Canadian?
No, but that's
just how they animate him. Okay, because I was like, I was waiting for some sort of revelation that like, Saddam's Canadian.
I think that's just how they decided to animate him, because they wanted to have the photorealistic face. So
Because he kind of like talked similar to.
Come on, guy.
He's like, hey, come on, man. Let's do it. Hey, fuck you, buddy.
The boot scene.
In the UN. Yeah,
I remember it as a kid being like, I don't know why they always say that about Canadians. We don't say about like that. But then as I've gotten older, it is definitely the East.
Yeah.
And as I've gotten older, I can hear the Canadian accent a little more.
Well, but like, I don't think anyone in Canada really says a boot in the same way that like people. It's
slighter than that, but it's like American is like about.
Well, it's the same thing as they parodied it in years later. They had an episode where Butters had a Canadian girlfriend, I think, and she said instead of saying sorry, she said, "I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
I'm sorry too, Butters."
Yeah.
And so again, it's just like they're emphasizing it, but that one's more clear because a lot of Americans, and there's lots of dialects, but a lot of Americans, they don't really pronounce O's like O's. They do it like A. Like if you listen to Joe Rogan, he says like orange.
Yeah. Orange. Yeah. Sorry.
It's fucked up.
That's something I had to learn when I was like auditioning for roles for like Canadian productions. I would be like, if sorry was in the script, I would be saying sorry. And they're like, you sound Canadian. Say sorry. I'm like, sorry. Oh, I didn't even think about that. But now I find myself saying sorry a lot in real life just because I've had to do that. It's so weird. But like in Eastern, like if you're like, oh, I'm going to take it for a rip, bud. What's that about? That's sort of. It's more like
Newfie.
about. Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear those Eastern accents right away. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they had like a guest on, and I was like, my ears just went bing. I was like, is that guy Canadian? And then a few minutes later, they revealed he was. I was like, yeah,
nice.
I knew it. Anyways,
major hit pick for me is when they're having the army training or the army briefing, and the hologram malfunctions, and he's like, "Get Bill Gates in here."
Well,
you told us Windows 98 would be better. Would
over
be
3 million times.
Yeah, would be faster with better access to the internet. It is faster.
That's one of the best parts.
Yeah.
Like it's so random.
I like the joke when the Canadian and Sheila are talking, like they're like having the TV show. And she's like, they're talking over each other. And he's like, please, can I finish? Can I finish? Okay, I'm done.
Okay, I'm finished.
I love that. I love the portrayal of the Canadians as like simultaneously just like unhinged and weird, but also like, we are a country. We take ourselves seriously.
They're not even a real country anyway. Yeah. I never really understood what that meant either. But
do you guys think that the Blame Canada is the best song in the movie? Because that's the one that got nominated for the Oscar.
That's the only one that I recognized from this movie. I was like, I've heard this song many times.
I feel like
it doesn't stand out to me as the best song.
I think what would Brian Boitano too? That's my favorite.
I don't know who that is. It's just like an Olympic skater.
Yeah. I had to Google it. It was like, he was like a Olympic skater.
That's why I always heard about Elvis Stoiko as a kid.
Yeah, but that's Canadian, right?
Yeah, he's Canadian.
Stoiko.
But I guess it was based off another song called "What Would Jesus Do?" But I didn't recognize the song at all, so I didn't know what the reference was.
Betty gets an answer too. That's what Brian Boitano.
Yeah, David still sings that around the office sometimes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, sometimes I'll be like,
wow. For me, the best song was the Satan, like, I Want to Be Up There song, for sure.
I like the parody of Les Miserables. Though you die, la resistance lives on.
Right.
I didn't know that was a parody.
Yeah, it's like a pretty direct play on One Day More. Not One Day More. The Can You Hear the People Singing the Song of Angry Men. It is a minute. I can't remember what it's called, though. But
I think my favorite song is the It's Easy Uncut.
That was funny too.
The boo is cold. It's just so funny.
I like when it's like, don't say
say buns.
Or say buns. Or what is it? Don't say fuck anymore, because fuck is the worst word that you can say. Fuck is the worst word that you can say. You say fuck. I shouldn't say fuck, no.
Fuck, no. Yeah. The only parents involved in this movie are the moms. Did you guys found that interesting?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Stan's dad, Randy Marsh, takes a lead in the show in later seasons, and he is in this for a very small amount. But back then, he wasn't really.
Yeah, he became a bigger and bigger character.
Yeah, what's that about?
I think they're probably just like they do Mothers Against. It's probably like Mad, Mothers Against Drunk Driving.
Right.
They became a political force in Washington, so I think it's just straight across to that.
I think it was just interesting to me that like the only parents ever really represented. I mean, I think that Randy is in this one for like 2 seconds, but I just thought that was interesting. I was like, okay, these guys. See, again, I'm thinking about the movie in terms of just like Trey Parker and Matt Stone. I'm like, what do they think? Like, what? Obviously, there's something there about how they think that like mothers take a more dominant role in parenting. Is that a normative claim? Like, do they think that they should do that, or like?
No, I don't think that's just probably the reality.
Are they just saying that like fathers are absent, and this is like?
It could be that, but honestly, I think it's just the tools they were given. Like, I think they probably wanted to do something like Mothers Against Drunk Driving. I think they already had Sheila as being like a strong character in the show. She was like known as like a strict bitch, and so they just were gonna use her.
I guess I just like, especially since I became a dad, I'm always interested in how dads are portrayed in media, and I feel like so often in complete family situations, the dad is just like not there almost. And I'm like, that's stupid. That's dumb. But it
goes the other way.
I'm not going to read too into it.
Like Peter Griffin's a bigger character than Lois. Like,
well, for sure. Yeah.
No.
Anyways.
He's like the main character.
We good here?
Yeah.
I've been watching White Lotus. I've seen
we're doing now playing. No fan service.
I've seen 2. We can do that later. I've seen 2 episodes. Seems okay.
White Lotus, yeah.
First season or second season?
I started at the beginning.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Second episode was a little better than the first one, I guess.
Yeah, you got to, you're going to keep watching, right?
Yeah, it's
I feel
might
like,
as well.
White Lotus is strong. Like every episode is strong in itself, I would say, but like it really, there's a sense of momentum as you get further into the show. And like for me anyways, like I definitely, like I wanted to binge it. I wanted to keep watching. So definitely continue. I mean, is there any like social commentary and stuff like that early on?
Not
You're kind of getting a feeling for
lot.
like,
It's more character driven, like, oh, I thought I had a health scare, and like maybe those 2 are gay for each other and that guy's an addict. There's no broader, like they're talking about race now.
You're
They've
still
kind of
kind of-
hinted at it in one scene, but
like with the indigenous people.
no.
Oh,
Belinda. the
oh
masseuse.
yeah. There's that. Yeah. There's like a subplot about how like the White Lotus Resort is.
Don't you spoil this for me. Don't you dare.
I don't think this isn't a spoiler.
You don't even have to finish that sentence. I already know what you're going to say.
Okay.
So let's just
Well, there we go. Moving on.
You watch anything? What are you watching?
Well, I just watched the episode 5 of the season 2 last night.
Okay.
Good.
And it is continuing to deliver. I'm
That's great.
so pleasantly surprised because like season 2 of shows is always like it could be hit or miss, and this is a hit.
Yep.
They somehow completely substituted all the characters except for one and completely changed location and are delivering on the exact same vibe. Not the exact same vibe, but like it's just as good.
Oh yeah.
Just I'm very pleasantly surprised.
That's great. I'm happy.
I finished Andor.
Oh, nice. I'm on episode 8. I just finished episode 8.
Thank you, David.
Yeah.
Yes!
We can't talk. Let's wait till I'm fully done. We can have a broader discussion. But it's great. It's like, it's what I like about it is that it drops the fantasy element of Star Wars and it's just sci-fi. And it's like way more within the category of sci-fi. And it's got a way more refined, sophisticated feel than like any other Star Wars, which I really like. I like the world, like the politics, everything. It's fantastic. It's great.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I'm so happy.
I hate Star Wars, and this is really back to something that actually has a point.
Yes.
I'm very happy.
And it's like, I'm crying. I had been at a point where like Star Wars was even more dead to me than it ever was. Like after Rise of Skywalker came out, we were like, Star Wars is dead.
Yeah.
That's it. That was a nail in the coffin. I mean, the first 2 sequels were like hard to deal with, and people had like crises of faith. And then Rise of Skywalker came out, and it's just like, it's over.
Yeah.
But then they put out more shows, and it seemed like Star Wars was over. But then they kind of like were putting out the shows, and you're like, okay, Mandalorian's okay,
Yeah.
okay. And it seems like they're kind of course correcting a little bit.
Unambitious in the sense of like trying to forge their own identity instead of just cashing in on iconography and feelings that we already have.
Yeah, and the Mandalorian like felt like it was going for that original trilogy feel,
Which is fine, and people liked it clearly.
Yeah, and I think Star Wars needed something like that to kind of get things sort of back on track. But then they just like the Book of Boba Fett was garbage. Yeah. Was there another one? Oh, Kenobi.
Obi-Wan, yeah.
Kenobi had some okay moments, but overall also garbage. Yeah. And this is just like, it has its own voice.
Yep.
Tony Gilroy obviously knows how to make a show.
Yep.
Knows how to write, direct.
Well, it's a good show. It's cool that it's in the Star Wars universe, but it would like, if it was totally separate, it would be a great show.
Yeah.
It's like, it just works.
It could be a good show outside of Star Wars, but the fact that it's in Star Wars, well, I'm just shocked. I'm just continually shocked that they made something a Star Wars thing that is this good.
Well, do you think it's going to have an impact on future things?
Well, it hasn't done
it
super well,
has
right?
to.
I
It
hope
has
so.
to. No, I think it wasn't doing very well, and I was like,
Thanks to
lamenting
you.
the fact.
It's been doing great.
I mean, I think that a lot of people who were watching it were like,
Please.
guys, watch it. Like they're spreading the good news, like Jesus has returned.
Well, and I think that often things of good quality have staying power, and they have the ability to, through word of mouth to keep sharing. Like you think of Avatar, and it's like it wasn't really that big at the beginning, and then it's like through word of mouth, it just kept getting bigger and bigger. And I feel like Andor will obviously not reach levels of Avatar, but it'll spread. And so many people that I admire are like, this is actually good, and I feel like more and more people will eventually watch it.
Yeah.
It's just there's so much to watch.
I think that Disney finally knows that they fucked up with this stuff. I'm not part of these people being like, oh, down with Disney, woke culture, etc. I'm just saying that, like, especially at least when it comes to Star Wars, they shit the bed.
Yes.
And I think that despite a huge portion of the fandom telling them that they shit the bed, they kept pushing and pushing and pushing with this like sequel stuff. And
They just kept shitting.
And then now they're like, okay, well, we're going to put out Andor, and the reception is so positive. They just fired their CEO,
Thank God,
and brought back Bob Iger, and so they're like,
Bye, Chapek.
if they're not reconfiguring things and like kind of like seeing what works and like, okay, let's go back into quality instead of kind of like trying to cash in on the franchise.
Yeah.
They would be so dumb to not.
So the question is,
Even just from like a pure profit-driven perspective, they'd be so dumb to not move with this.
Well, how do they take the success of this and make it a movie with lightsabers and stuff?
I think that you totally could. You just need to have
restraint, tone. Like, what's the difference?
I think that the difference with Andor is there's a number of differences, but A is having a experienced filmmaker who is experienced not just at making kind of like fun romps, but at making like prestige drama
and character-driven
like he
dramas.
I think Tony Gilroy wrote like Michael Clayton, and he has other like obviously well-written movies in his resume. I forget what they are, but they brought in someone who knows what they're doing, and they also decided I don't know whether it was Tony Gilroy. I don't know.
Nightcrawler.
That movie rules.
He's a producer on it.
He's like, he knows how to make a good thing. And I don't know what the other elements were in terms of keeping the lore consistent, but one of the things that I really, really, really loved about the show was how down to earth it seemed in like the little details.
Yeah.
Like we see the like knobs on the computer, and we see how things work, and we get close-ups on like devices and vehicles and clothing and weapons and items that are like really important to see the little details on, because it places you in the universe. Mm-hmm. I don't know who was involved with doing that, whether it was like Lucasfilm Story Group or whether they had like a lore person, but
it feels
that aspect was on point.
Well, and even the stuff that like doesn't feel traditionally Star Wars to me, where you're going through like a big bureaucratic center, and it's just like these multi-levels and like thousands and thousands of little pods and stuff, and it's like
the Senate.
No, not the Senate. When the guy's going into like the Bureau of Regulations or whatever.
Yeah.
I think like that stuff really elevates the show. The costumes feel so well realized and thought out. Like all the Mon Mothma stuff, it's like it feels really classy in a way that Star Wars has never been classy.
Yeah,
I think it's fantastic.
Bond Wars.
Bond Wars. Yeah.
That scratches your Bond itch.
Yep.
He loves the classy Bond.
I've seen some people describe it as like more Blade Runner-esque.
I think it
Star
feels very
Wars-esque.
cyberpunky to me.
And I'm
like Blade Runner, everyone loves it, but no one sees it.
Yeah. I mean, there's a part of me, the Star Wars fan part of me is like, ooh, I don't know if I want Star Wars to be like Blade Runner. But at the same time, it's not like full on Blade Runner.
No.
It's just like Star Wars with like a little taste of like more realistic sci-fi. And honestly, if Star Wars is going to survive, it needs that. It can't keep doing this thing where they're just like, the rules don't matter and anything goes, because there are some people who think that, and a lot of other people don't think that. They want the details to matter.
I think a lot of the cyberpunk feeling is sound design as well. Like they've dropped the John Williams thematic scores, and it's much more, ambience. And I think that works really well for the show, and doesn't feel like, as epic and magical, but it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be these people that are like fucking scrappy versus the Empire. And the show just nails how oppressive the Empire is. I think there's a couple times it's cartoony, but like it works, and you're like, wow, there's nowhere you can go. Like there is no option but to fight.
That's a huge plus for me is the leaning into the what life is like in the Empire for the people on the ground. And I think that Star Wars has really refrained from depicting that.
Yep.
From depicting what like regular people are experiencing. And I think that having a show like lean into that makes everything seem so much more real, and really gets you thinking about like this as an allegory for, you know, Nazi Germany or whatever. I've seen some people, there's some discourse online about how Andor is like insurrectionary anarchist propaganda, and they're like, oh, it's like showing you how to fight back against fascists and stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, I feel like you're misreading this if the Empire is just like us right now, but like if you're looking at it as a general sort of depiction of like totalitarian regimes and how freedom is important to fight for, and like it's powerful as that. Like I feel the characters and what they're fighting for, and I'm rooting for them, and the music is a big part of that. Like maybe it's not like the big fanfare like ba 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 ba, you know, but there is like uplifting, hopeful, like forward motion, like music with momentum that makes you want to rush the barracks and like take down the Empire, you know? And
political intrigue that actually fucking matters.
Yes.
Not just like stupid people saying exactly what they mean all the time. It's like, it's great. It's good.
I saw some people, okay, one more thing. Last thing. I saw some people complaining about like some of the, like specifically, this is sort of a spoiler. Okay. So Luthen, the character Luthen, has a ship.
That's
the Fandor.
Skarsgård?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you probably haven't gotten there in episode 8?
I finished episode 8. So he talks to a character that's in Rogue One.
Does he have the confrontation with the cruiser yet?
No.
Okay, never mind.
I'm sorry.
Anyways,
we'll talk about it next week.
There were some people complaining about like how the mechanics said like that wouldn't work.
Yeah.
But they were saying that before the episode came out, and then the episode came out, and it was like, oh, it totally makes sense. Okay. They make it work.
Yeah.
So there isn't even that much stuff where you're like, there aren't even opportunities to say they use the wrong bombers.
Yeah.
And they're like, that's not how the Force works. There aren't even those opportunities because they've thought of all that.
That's great.
And it's so refreshing. Okay.
I love it.
That's all I have to say about
I've also watched half of the season of Wednesday, which is the new Tim Burton Addams Family show.
Addams Family.
My sister is super excited for that.
Yeah, it's way less Addams Family than I expected. It's a teen school show with fantasy elements where it's just Wednesday's tramps out of her family, goes to school. It's good. I'm into it. The teen drama stuff, there's like a lot of cringy, you know, like haha TikTok jokes. But then the actual plot and fantasy elements are fun, and like I'm engaged, and I'm excited to watch more. I stayed up late last night to watch another episode, and I was like, this was a bad life choice, but a good media choice.
I've heard good things about it.
Yeah, it's good. And
it seems like there's like a fandom.
Jenna Ortega is awesome. Yeah, she will be like Wednesday's going to be huge costumes next year.
Oh yeah.
And it works. It's fun.
Nice.
I don't know where it's going to go. Like I know it's going to go, but I don't know who's going to be the bad guy. It's like one of those whodunit mystery kind of, you know those teen high school things where it's like there's people dying, but like who's doing it?
Right.
And so it's good.
She's like an anti-hero, I guess. Is that what's happening?
She's like Wednesday from the other shows and the cartoons and stuff where, you know, she's morbid and dark, but she is softened by people and she starts to care, you know. That's her arc, is like, you know, now she cares.
Mm-hmm.
I'm reading the comments from our last video. Sorry, guys.
That's all good.
I checked out of this.
But yeah, I'm into it. I'll let you guys know at the end if it finishes strong. Other than that, I've watched 10 Christmas movies so far.
Wow.
Yep.
That's nuts, man.
Yep.
Wow.
We're going hard.
Let's go.
I think we need to wrap this up, but first we would be remiss if we didn't do a little bit of fan service. Service the fans.
Service the fans.
I just was laughing. One user wrote, "I'm from India with Orthodox parents. All the dating questions went totally over my head." But I just want to say thank you to everybody who wrote into us.
Yeah.
And I received some follow-ups from a couple of you. You guys were just thanking us for the coverage. I wish you claimed that we helped you. I hope that's true. I know that every time that I've like written into a show for like specific advice, in my case about like how to build a home theater. It's always been like, here's what you should do, and like there's a lack of context, so the answer doesn't really apply to your situation. And with delicate matters like the ones we were discussing, there would be so many follow-up questions, and the back and forth would really inform how the conversation went. But I think we did our best, and you guys seem to have liked it. So
Yeah.
glad we could help. And apparently it's very weird, and I understand this too, that reading comments from other people on YouTube about your situation, that must be super weird.
Yeah.
I have a fan service from that. But were you going to do this one?
I'm not doing anything.
Oh, okay. Well, Keith knows. I called it. He says he's the guy that wrote in the Wikipedia thing like to win arguments with his girlfriend, he edits Wikipedia and then shows her.
So he was trolling?
Yeah, he says, I was totally joking, but come on, that's hilarious. I'm proud of that one. I had no idea what I would say, just that I had to say something funny. It came to me as I was writing it. Nice.
Well,
I
that
called
makes me
it,
feel
Keith.
a little bit better about the world.
But we just, we wanted to give, what do you call it? The benefit of the doubt?
Yeah.
Good faith response, just in case there was someone that insane out there.
I don't like bad faith. I prefer Faith Hill.
There's one comment that says, I love you guys, but please stick to the movies and show reviews. Well, guess what? No. We're doing nothing. 4 episodes left. See you later. See you never.
We're going to not stick to it so much that we're not going to do it at all.
If you guys want us to stick around, send me $1 million cash.
Send us $1 million. Make a GoFundMe. We'll donate it to the food bank. You can email us, hello@they'rejustmovies.com. You can tweet at us at they'rejustmovies. No, it's not. It's at TJMPod.
TJM Pod.
I'm so checked out.
Hello. I think we should call ourselves couple critics for the rest of the last 4 episodes.
We
Why
change all
not?
the branding
Petition.
back.
That's
They're
what the
just
GoFundMe's
carpools.
for.
I kind of want to do that now.
We only talk about carpools. They're just carpools.
Yeah.
We review the various carpools.
They're just critics. We critique other critics.
I gotta pee so bad.
Okay.
See you later.
Bye.
Love it.